Once upon a time in the Ordovician, about 440 million years ago, there lived an algae that we call green algae. The green algae is still alive today as well, but this was a particular green algae. We call the Calamites. They did something extraordinary. All those years ago, most green algae lived in water, but they decided they wanted to live and live on land. They were becoming the first plants. Now, you might think this is nothing special. After all, we live on land. But at the time, there was no life on land. All of the life was in the seas. Now, being a plant and trying to move on land was pretty difficult. A few insects had developed ways to live on land, but what were they doing? They developed legs and ways of protecting their bodies from drying out. But unfortunately, green algae did not have that. Plants have stiffer bodies than algae. What could they do? They needed to resist the pull of gravity, and their bodies developed tissues that collected cells that look different and do different jobs. These first plants were not independent, though. They developed tissues and collected all those different things. We know the plants needed water to survive, and the first plants did not have roots, so they developed a partnership with some fungus, and they grew on the underside of their stems and acted like roots. Slowly, these plants developed actual roots and no longer needed the fungus. Living on land brings perils, especially the dangers of drying out. Early plants developed a waxy coating around themselves so that they could still get the carbon dioxide from the air and release the oxygen. It was kind of like a pore that could open and close. The first plants on land were very, very short, only a few inches tall. They were called the Bryophytes, and they're like mosses and liverworts and hornworts. But during the Silurian period, plants developed tubes that they could conduct water and minerals through. Now plants could grow taller, and we call them tracheophytes. A trachea is just like that of a tube in your throat. Let's take a look at some of the tracheophytes. We have lycopods, like this lycophyte right here. They get their word from lycos, meaning pus, and pus, meaning foot, so wolf foot. That refers to the claw-like shape of the roots. The lycopod had leaves and only one vein. There was a sigillaria, which is a poor spore-bearing plant that grew as tall as a tree, but it's now extinct. There was also plants like the lepidodendron, known as a scale tree. They also went extinct, but during the Carboniferous period, they could be as tall as 30 meters. The Calamites were another plant, ancestors of the modern horsetail. But horsetails are small and herbaceous. The Calamites grew up to 30 meters, and they were related to the ferns. Ferns and horsetails are the first plants with true leaves. The chordates are extinct now, but they also grew quite large from their strap-shaped leaves. What do we know about them, and how did we even know that they existed? Well, we found fossils. We even found their seeds. We call these first plants the Gymnosperms, which means naked seed. These seeds are not protected by a fruit. On our timeline, we see ginkgos, we see conifer, and cycads. All of them continue to exist today. Seeds were something new and extraordinary. Plants began to produce seeds instead of spores. And what was great about that? Well, the seed helps the embryo and the baby plant to survive by providing a little lunchbox. Do you see this volcano right over here? During this time in the Permian, there were some great volcanic eruptions in Earth's history. Many species were wiped out, but the Gymnosperms survived. And they began to flourish during the time of the dinosaurs. Much later, we see our flowering plants. All the way at the end of the Cretaceous period. We call them Angiosperms. That means seeds in a box. These plants have protected their seeds with fruits. Just imagine how long the world went on without having any flowers in it until this time period. And one group of flowering plants that came in so late, but there have been very, very important to us human beings, was the grasses. They came just past in the Cenozoic area. We have like our orchids and our grass. And here they are, quite late on our history of life. All our grains like wheat, corn, rice, oats, they are all grasses. Plants have had a very, very long history on our timeline as we look back all the way almost to the beginning. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have the essentials for the land animals and for us.